Sir Galahad abandoned his quest. Not for gold, not for glory, for Netflix. The most feared knight in Camelot just spent 48 hours straight watching The Witcher. His sword lies forgotten, his armor gathers dust, and dragons roam free because every knight in the kingdom is binge-watching instead of fighting. What if medieval knights had Netflix? What if streaming arrived 700 years early? Everything would change. Knights would call in sick to battles. Password sharing would cause international wars. And the most terrifying sound in any castle wouldn't be a dragon's roar. It would be the dreaded buffering symbol. This is the story of how entertainment technology destroyed and rebuilt medieval civilization. How Are You Still Watching became more feared than Off With His Head, and how a simple red logo brought the age of chivalry to its knees. It started with one mysterious device, one glowing screen, one moment that changed everything. Welcome to medieval Netflix, where knights binge-watch instead of dragon slay, and the real battle isn't for kingdoms, it's for the remote control. Our tale begins on a Tuesday morning when a mysterious merchant arrived at the castle gates, claiming to possess a magical viewing box that could display any story ever told. The merchant, who called himself Geoffrey of Netflix, wore strange robes that seemed to shimmer between red and black, and spoke in riddles about something called algorithm optimization and user engagement metrics. The court wizard, naturally suspicious of competition, examined the device thoroughly. He spent 3 days poking it with various enchanted sticks, muttering incantations, and consulting his collection of dusty tomes about foreign magic. Finally, he declared it probably not demonic, but definitely suspicious, and possibly powered by very small imprisoned spirits who enjoy telling stories. King Arthur, ever the early adopter, and always eager to stay ahead of neighboring kingdoms in terms of technological advancement, decided to give this Netflix a royal trial. He had heard rumors that King Richard of the neighboring realm had recently acquired something called Amazon Prime, and Arthur refused to fall behind in the streaming wars that apparently now determined diplomatic superiority. Within minutes of the first account setup, chaos ensued. The username selection alone took 3 hours, as every knight insisted on variations of Sir Dragonslayer, Noble Warrior of Light, or Lancelot the Brave. Sir Gareth proposed Gareth smashes enemies, while Sir Percival wanted Percival pure of heart and strong of arm. Eventually, after much debate and one minor sword fight, they settled on Camelot Crew 347 with the password Excalibur 23, much to the royal cybersecurity advisor's dismay. The advisor, a former monk named Brother Francis, had recently been appointed to this newly created position after expressing concerns about magical device security protocols. The password selection process revealed much about medieval security practices. Sir Lancelot suggested Guinevere as the password, which caused an uncomfortable silence around the round table. Sir Gawain proposed Dragonslayer, which was rejected for being too obvious. Young Squire Timothy suggested Password 123, which everyone agreed was brilliant in its simplicity until Brother Francis explained the concept of password strength and potential security breaches by rival kingdoms. The first show they discovered was, ironically, Game of Thrones. Sir Lancelot watched the Red Wedding and immediately stood up, applauding vigorously. "Finally!" he declared, his eyes shining with appreciation. "A show that understands workplace politics. This Walder Frey fellow knows how to handle disrespectful guests, though I must say, his hospitality standards could use improvement." The other knights nodded in solemn agreement as they watched the brutal scene unfold. Medieval life was surprisingly similar to Westeros, except with better dental hygiene, fewer surprise deaths during dinner parties, and significantly less incest among ruling families. Sir Bedivere commented that the show's political intrigue reminded him of last year's Harvest Festival Planning Committee, though with more actual murder and fewer arguments about seating arrangements. Sir Gareth became particularly invested in the character of the Mountain, appreciating his straightforward approach to conflict resolution. "Now there's a warrior who doesn't waste time with lengthy negotiations," he observed, while taking notes on combat techniques, though his armor maintenance leaves something to be desired. But it was Sir Percival who became the first true Netflix addict of Camelot. He discovered the autoplay feature during a particularly gripping episode of The Witcher, and spent the next 48 hours glued to his screen, emerging only when his loyal squire, a worried young man named Edmund, reminded him that he hadn't eaten since the previous Tuesday, and that his horse was beginning to think he'd been killed by a particularly boring dragon. But Geralt just found another contract. Percival protested, his eyes bloodshot and his usually immaculate beard now full of crumbs from medieval snack foods. stale bread, aged cheese, and what appeared to be remnants of last week's mutton stew. And there's this bard named Jasquier who reminds me of our court musician, except he's actually talented and doesn't smell like fermented cabbage. Edmund, who had served Sir Percival faithfully for 3 years, had never seen his master in such a state. The knight who once spent entire days in prayer and meditation now sat transfixed by moving pictures, occasionally shouting at the screen when characters made what he considered poor tactical decisions. "My lord," Edmund ventured carefully, "perhaps you should rest. The sun has risen twice since you began this spiritual journey with the magical viewing box." The Netflix algorithm, designed for modern audiences with contemporary interests and viewing habits, struggled desperately to understand medieval preferences. After Sir Gareth watched one romantic comedy, purely by accident, he insisted, claiming he had been trying to find a documentary about siege warfare, the system began recommending nothing but Jane Austen adaptations, romantic period dramas, and films featuring what the algorithm categorized as strong emotional content and relationship development. "Why does this cursed box think I wish to watch people discuss feelings and attend balls?" Gareth complained loudly during the morning round table meeting, while secretly having thoroughly enjoyed Pride and Prejudice during his night watch duties. He had found Mr. Darcy's character development quite compelling and appreciated the social commentary, though he would never admit this publicly. "I am a warrior. I slay dragons and defend the innocent. I do not care about elaborate dance sequences and carefully orchestrated marriage proposals." Sir Tristram, however, had discovered the romance genre intentionally and was openly enthusiastic about it. He spent his evenings watching every available adaptation of romantic literature, taking detailed notes on courtship techniques and poetic declarations of love. His recent attempts to woo Lady Catherine using dialogue borrowed from Netflix originals had been met with mixed results. She appreciated the effort but found his delivery somewhat mechanical. Password sharing became the greatest diplomatic challenge Camelot had faced since the Crusades. King Arthur's royal Netflix account was soon being accessed by every knight, squire, servant, stable boy, kitchen maid, and distant cousin within a 50-mile radius of the castle. The "Who's Watching" screen looked like a medieval census, featuring profiles named Sir Gareth, Lady Guinevere, stable boy Tom, kitchen maid Margaret, that guy from the armory, and mysteriously, dragon enthusiast 007. The profile creation process had become a political nightmare. Everyone wanted their name listed first, which they believed indicated their importance in the castle hierarchy. Arguments erupted over profile pictures. Should they use their coat of arms, their actual faces, or perhaps artistic representations of their greatest victories? Sir Lancelot chose an image of his favorite sword, while Lady Guinevere selected a portrait of her beloved horse. The mysterious dragon enthusiast 007 profile remained a source of castle-wide speculation. The account showed activity at all hours, consistently watching documentaries about mythical creatures, fantasy epics, and anything involving large fire-breathing lizards. Various theories circulated about the identity of this secret viewer, ranging from a disguised dragon infiltrating their entertainment system to the court wizard conducting research on potential enemies. The most popular profile, however, belonged to the court jester, a remarkably creative man named Fool Henry, who had somehow figured out how to access the kids section. He spent his days watching animated tales, taking careful notes, and then adapting them for live court performances that had become the highlight of everyone's week. His rendition of Frozen became a castle sensation, though his interpretation of Let It Go involved significantly more juggling, fire-breathing tricks, and definitely more references to medieval torture devices than the original version. The song's central message about embracing one's true self resonated deeply with the medieval audience, though Henry's version included lyrics about letting go of one's enemies from the castle battlements, which added a darker twist to the uplifting anthem. Henry's adaptation of Moana featured elaborate costume changes and a surprisingly convincing portrayal of ocean waves using blue silk scarves and enthusiastic arm movements. His version of the demigod Maui was performed with such energy that the show's premise involved children disappearing into an alternate realm called the Upside Down Keep, where everything was darker, more dangerous, and populated by creatures that made regular medieval monsters look friendly and approachable. The young protagonists had to navigate this terrifying landscape while dealing with typical adolescent problems like acne, voice changes, and learning proper sword technique. The Crown Camelot edition was immediately banned by King Arthur after the first episode, which portrayed him as indecisive, prone to dramatic monologuing, and overly dependent on the advice of his knights for even basic daily decisions like what to eat for breakfast. The show suggested that most of his legendary accomplishments were actually group efforts and that his primary skill was taking credit for other people's ideas. Medieval baking championship became an unexpected hit among the castle's culinary staff. The show featured bakers from across the realm competing to create elaborate pastries and bread sculptures under extreme time pressure, judged by a panel of stern-faced master bakers who critiqued everything from crumb texture to decorative piping techniques. The castle's head cook, Master Wilhelm, became obsessed with the show and began experimenting with increasingly complex recipes that often resulted in kitchen disasters and very unhappy dinner guests. The rating system caused considerable philosophical debate among the knights, who approached everything with the seriousness of military strategy. Instead of thumbs up or down, medieval Netflix used crossed swords for approval and broken shields for disapproval. However, the knights couldn't agree on what constituted good entertainment, and their rating criteria varied wildly based on personal interests and professional expertise. Sir Gawain gave 5 swords to any documentary about proper sword maintenance, blacksmithing techniques, or historical battles, regardless of entertainment value. His reviews were detailed technical assessments. Excellent demonstration of blade tempering in Episode 3, though the narrator's pronunciation of Damascus steel needs improvement. The segment on handle wrapping was particularly informative. 5 swords. Sir Tristram exclusively rated romantic ballads and love stories, often writing lengthy reviews that read more like poetry than criticism. His 5-sword review of Romeo and Juliet was so flowery and elaborate that other users complained it was longer than the actual play and considerably more difficult to understand. The rating system also revealed unexpected preferences among the knights. Sir Bedivere, known for his stern demeanor and military precision, consistently gave high ratings to cooking shows, particularly those featuring elaborate desserts. When questioned about this, he claimed he was conducting research into enemy weakening tactics through sugar dependency, but everyone suspected he simply had a sweet tooth. Binge-watching culture transformed medieval social dynamics entirely, creating new social problems that the castle's leadership was unprepared to handle. Knights began calling in sick to quests, claiming sudden onset of streaming fever, acute series addiction, or chronic episode continuation syndrome. Round-table meetings were postponed indefinitely because half the knights were perpetually in the middle of just one more episode of Vikings, which they watched primarily to critique the historical inaccuracies and rate the battle choreography. Sir Lancelot became particularly critical of the Vikings series, pausing frequently to lecture his viewing companions about proper shield wall formation and the impracticality of certain battle tactics shown on screen. No self-respecting warrior would charge into battle without proper backup support, he would declare, rewinding scenes to point out strategic errors. And don't get me started on their complete disregard for supply line management. The "Are you still watching?" notification became the most feared message in the kingdom, appearing at the worst possible moments during climactic battle scenes, romantic confessions, or crucial plot reveals. Knights developed elaborate strategies to keep the screen active, including training their horses to tap the continue button with their hooves, though this led to several unfortunate incidents involving accidental genre switches and confused equines. Sir Percival's horse, an intelligent mare named Moonbeam, became particularly skilled at screen interaction after weeks of training. However, her preference for romantic comedies meant that Percival often found his serious historical documentaries interrupted by Jane Austen adaptations. The horse seemed to have developed her own viewing preferences and would stubbornly refuse to select anything without romantic subplot elements. Medieval memes began appearing in illuminated manuscripts as the monks adapted their traditional art form to contemporary humor. Brother Thomas, the head manuscript illuminator, initially resisted this frivolous use of his sacred craft, but eventually embraced the new medium. After his illustration of a confused knight with the caption, "When Netflix asks if you want to restart the series you've been watching for 3 months," became the most requested manuscript in the monastery's history. The monks developed an entire cottage industry around Netflix-themed illuminated manuscripts. Brother Francis created elaborate marginalia depicting knights battling buffering symbols. Brother Matthew specialized in portraits of characters making confused faces while staring at recommendation algorithms. Their work became so popular that other kingdoms began commissioning custom Netflix memes, creating the world's first international market for streaming-related art. The autoplay feature became a source of constant medieval complaints and the subject of heated theological debate. By what dark magic does this infernal device continue displaying moving pictures without royal decree? Demanded Sir Bedivere, after accidentally watching 6 hours of a cooking show he claimed to have no interest in, though observers noted he had taken extensive notes on pastry preparation techniques. The automatic preview sounds startled horses throughout the castle grounds, interrupted prayer services in the chapel, and caused at least 3 false dragon attack alarms when action movie trailers began playing at maximum volume during quiet afternoon hours. The castle's animal population seemed particularly sensitive to the sudden audio bursts. Chickens stopped laying eggs for a week after a horror movie preview played during their feeding time. Social hierarchy crumbled under the weight of streaming equality as the traditional medieval class system struggled to adapt to a technology that treated everyone's viewing preferences with equal respect. Peasants discovered they could create their own accounts using assumed names and suddenly had access to the same entertainment as nobility, leading to what historians would later call the Great Netflix Revolution of 1348. The revolution began when a group of serfs, led by a charismatic farmer named Thomas Miller, demanded not just better working conditions and fair wages, but also premium account access and the right to rate shows without noble supervision. "Why should Lord Geoffrey's opinion of The Witcher carry more weight than mine?" Thomas declared during a heated village meeting. "I fought more actual monsters in my fields than he's encountered in his entire pampered life." The peasant uprising included demands for dedicated viewing time in the castle's Great Hall, equal representation on the newly formed Netflix Advisory Council, and protection from spoiler-related persecution. The nobles initially dismissed these demands as ridiculous, but when the serfs threatened to cancel their subscriptions and create competing entertainment platforms, negotiations began in earnest. The comment system, had it existed in medieval times, would have been absolute chaos, requiring its own system of moderation and diplomatic intervention. Medieval knights were not known for their restraint, diplomatic language, or ability to disagree respectfully with strangers. Reviews would have read like battle reports combined with personal vendettas and religious declarations. Sir Gareth's hypothetical reviews would have been legendary for their aggressive tone and detailed combat analysis. This dragon documentary lacks proper fire-breathing technique and realistic scale armor representation. 2 swords out of 5. The narrator clearly has never faced a real dragon, and his voice irritates me like chalk on slate. Also, why is everyone speaking in riddles? Speak plainly, you cowards! Additionally, the dragon's flight patterns are completely unrealistic and would result in immediate crash landing in any real combat situation. Lady Guinevere's reviews would have focused on character, development, and emotional authenticity. While the romantic subplot showed promise, the female characters lacked agency and spent far too much time waiting for rescue. The costume design was historically inaccurate. No self-respecting lady would wear such impractical sleeves to a tournament. 3 swords out of 5, and only because the horse scenes were well choreographed. Spoiler culture became a genuine diplomatic crisis, requiring international intervention and the development of complex protocols for information sharing. The town crier, whose traditional job was to announce daily news, weather reports, and royal proclamations, couldn't help but incorporate plot twists into his regular announcements, treating fictional revelations with the same importance as actual political developments. Hear ye, he would bellow from the castle steps each morning. Tomorrow shall be partly cloudy with a chance of rain. The Harvest Festival Planning Committee will meet after evening prayers. Also, the butler committed the murder in episode 6 of that mystery series everyone's watching. Sir Lancelot requests that everyone remember to clean their armor properly. God save the king. The spoiler crisis reached international proportions when the crier's announcements could be heard from neighboring kingdoms, causing diplomatic incidents and formal complaints about unauthorized plot revelation across territorial boundaries. Emergency meetings were called to establish the Treaty of Spoiler-Free Communication, which required all town criers to limit their announcements to weather, official proclamations, and agricultural updates. Knights developed elaborate spoiler-free communication systems that resembled military code more than casual conversation. The blonde dragon mother's story has taken an interesting turn in the Eastern Territories, became acceptable dinner conversation, while directly mentioning character deaths was punishable by banishment from the Great Hall's viewing area and a formal notation in one's permanent nightly record. The development of spoiler-safe language created new jobs for linguistic specialists and diplomatic interpreters. Professional spoiler translators were employed to convert dangerous plot information into safe, vague references that could be discussed publicly without ruining anyone's viewing experience. These specialists commanded high wages and were considered essential personnel during major series finales. Algorithm's recommendation system baffled medieval minds with its mysterious logic and seemingly random suggestions. After watching one historical documentary about Roman military tactics, Sir Galahad's suggestions were flooded with every period drama ever made, creating a viewing queue that would take approximately 14 years to complete if he watched continuously without breaks for sleep or food. I watched one film about Roman soldiers and their siege techniques, he complained during a round-table meeting, waving his viewing device dramatically. And now this cursed box believes I wish to see nothing but toga-wearing warriors for eternity. Yesterday it suggested a cooking show about ancient bread recipes. Today, it recommended a romantic comedy set in a Roman bathhouse, and this morning I discovered it had automatically added 17 different gladiator documentaries to my watch list. The recommendation system seemed to operate on principles that defied medieval understanding of logic and causality. Sir Tristram watched one romantic ballad and suddenly found his suggestions filled with cooking shows, apparently because the algorithm had detected some mysterious connection between love songs and culinary arts that no human could comprehend. Medieval. Netflix and chill took on entirely different meanings in a world where central heating didn't exist and privacy was a luxury available only to the wealthy nobility. Would you care to retire to my chambers to watch moving pictures and consume medieval snacks? Became the most popular romantic proposition in the kingdom, though the execution was considerably more complicated than modern equivalents. Medieval snacks consisted mainly of bread, cheese, ale, and whatever preserved meats happened to be available, so the culinary experience was arguably more authentic than modern movie theater fare, though significantly less varied and considerably more likely to cause digestive issues during romantic moments. The challenge of balancing food consumption with romantic intentions while trying to follow complex plotlines proved beyond most medieval couples' multitasking abilities. The logistics of medieval Netflix and chill required extensive planning and preparation. Chambers needed to be warmed with braziers, candles had to be positioned to provide adequate lighting without creating fire hazards, and comfortable seating arrangements had to be improvised using available furniture and animal furs. The whole process required approximately 2 hours of setup time, during which the romantic mood often dissipated entirely. The loading screen became medieval society's greatest test of patience, challenging even the most stoic knights who could wait motionless in ambush for hours while hunting dangerous enemies. A spinning circle and the message, "loading content," proved more frustrating than any dragon siege or political crisis they had previously encountered. Sir Lancelot was repeatedly observed shouting at his screen, "I have slain dragons with less effort than this cursed buffering requires. I have laid siege to enemy castles with greater success than attempting to watch a simple moving picture. By God's wounds, I have negotiated peace treaties that concluded faster than this loading process." The technical challenges of streaming in medieval times created entirely new categories of problems that required innovative solutions. Internet connectivity in stone castles proved problematic, the thick walls that provided excellent protection against arrows and siege. Weapons also blocked Wi-Fi signals with devastating efficiency. Brother Francis, the castle's newly appointed IT specialist, spent weeks trying to establish reliable internet throughout the castle grounds. His solutions included positioning signal boosters on battlements, running cables through ancient drainage systems, and training carrier pigeons to deliver manual data packets when the wireless connection failed completely. Power source problems created additional complications. Medieval electrical infrastructure was non-existent, requiring creative solutions for device charging. The court wizard experimented with various magical energy sources, while more practical individuals developed elaborate bicycle-powered generators operated by enthusiastic squires who were promised extra viewing time in exchange for their peddling services. Subtitle preferences divided the court into warring factions that rivaled the political divisions caused by major military conflicts. The older knights insisted on reading every word displayed on screen, claiming it helped improve their literacy and allowed them to better understand foreign accents, while younger squires preferred the original audio, even when watching foreign films in languages that wouldn't be invented for another few centuries. The great subtitle debate of 1348 nearly led to civil war, with passionate arguments about the merits of various subtitle styles, font sizes, and placement options. Sir Bedivere led the prose subtitle faction, arguing that written text allowed for better comprehension and note-taking during educational documentaries. Sir Gareth headed the anti-subtitle coalition, claiming that reading text distracted from visual action sequences and reduced the immersive experience of watching combat scenes. The conflict was resolved only when someone discovered the audio description feature, which everyone agreed was basically having a professional bard narrate the action, making it culturally acceptable and historically appropriate. The audio descriptions were performed by trained storytellers who added their own dramatic flair to the standard narration, creating a uniquely medieval viewing experience. Medieval customer service would have been handled entirely by ravens carrying complaint scrolls between Camelot and Netflix headquarters, creating a primitive but effective feedback system that took approximately 6 weeks for each round of communication. Typical complaints included detailed grievances written in formal medieval legal language. "To whom it may concern at the house of Netflix," wrote Sir Bedivere in his carefully scripted complaint letter. The moving pictures did cease their movement during the most crucial moment of a battle scene, leaving this humble knight in a state of suspended anticipation that borders on torture. Send assistance immediately, or face the righteous wrath of Sir Bedivere the Impatient, Knight of the Round Table, Defender of the Innocent, and premium subscriber since last Tuesday. Postscript. Also, why do your mysterious recommendation spirits keep suggesting romantic poetry collections? I am a warrior, not a lovesick troubadour, and my viewing preferences should reflect my noble calling to defend justice and slay evildoers. The ravens employed for customer service communication developed their own union and demanded better working conditions, including premium bird seed, weather protection during long flights, and hazard pay for deliveries to territories known for skilled archers. The Great Raven Strike of 1348 temporarily shut down all customer service operations until management agreed to improved perching facilities and extended rest periods between deliveries. The because you watched feature created endless confusion and philosophical debates about the nature of entertainment, preferences, and personal identity. Because you watched The Lord of the Rings, we recommend, led to suggestions ranging from historical documentaries about medieval warfare to animated children's films about talking animals, apparently based on algorithmic logic that defied human understanding. Sir Percival spent an entire afternoon trying to understand why watching one fantasy epic about a magical ring meant Netflix thought he would enjoy romantic comedies set in modern-day coffee shops, a concept that was doubly confusing since coffee wouldn't reach Europe for several more centuries, and the idea of casual romantic meetings in public establishments was completely foreign to medieval social customs. The recommendation algorithm seemed to operate on the principle that all entertainment preferences were somehow interconnected in ways that medieval minds, trained in straightforward cause and effect relationships, found impossible to comprehend. Watching a documentary about castle construction led to suggestions for cooking shows, apparently because both involved following detailed instructions and creating something functional from raw materials. Parental controls became necessary when young pages and squires discovered the more mature content sections of the streaming service, leading to awkward conversations between knights and their protégés about appropriate viewing material and the difference between educational violence and gratuitous violence. Castle computer time was strictly monitored through elaborate scheduling systems that resembled military duty rosters more than entertainment guidelines. Arguments over screen time allocation led to actual sword fights, which was considered both ironic and historically appropriate, though it did result in several damaged devices and at least one minor diplomatic incident when Sir Gareth accidentally struck Sir Lancelot during a particularly heated dispute over viewing priorities. The most controversial feature among medieval users was the ability to skip intro sequences, creating a philosophical divide that reflected deeper cultural values about respect for storytellers and the proper way to experience narrative. Traditional knights argued that skipping the opening credits was disrespectful to the storytellers and violated the sacred relationship between audience and performer, while progressive knights claimed life was too short to watch the same 30-second sequence repeatedly, especially when they had limited time between quests and other knightly duties. This philosophical divide created the two great Netflix houses of medieval times: House Skip Intro and House Watch Everything. House Skip Intro, led by Sir Gareth, adopted the motto, "Life is short, stories are long, time is precious." House Watch Everything, headed by Sir Bedivere, chose honor the artist, respect the craft, experience the complete vision. The conflict between these houses manifested in everything from seating arrangements at the Round Table to marriage negotiations between noble families. Young knights were expected to declare their allegiance upon reaching viewing age, and mixed marriages between skip intro and watch everything. Families required extensive prenuptial negotiations about household viewing policies. The seasonal release schedule concept proved particularly challenging for medieval minds accustomed to stories that were either told completely in one sitting or continued indefinitely through generations of oral tradition. The idea that a story would be deliberately interrupted for months at a time seemed like cruel and unusual punishment designed to torture audiences. "What manner of sadistic storyteller," demanded Sir Lancelot, "creates a tale of great adventure and heroism, reaches the most exciting moment, and then declares that the audience must wait until the harvest season to learn what happens next? In my day, bards finished their stories before requesting payment, and audiences knew whether the hero lived or died before leaving the Great Hall." The concept of season finales and cliffhangers violated every principle of medieval storytelling, where audiences expected complete narrative satisfaction and clear resolution of conflicts. The psychological torture of waiting months to discover plot resolutions was considered a form of mental warfare that would have been banned by the Geneva Convention, had it existed. Binge-watching medical conditions began appearing throughout the kingdom as knights and nobles developed symptoms related to extended screen viewing in poorly lit medieval chambers. Court physicians, working with limited knowledge of ophthalmology and no understanding of digital eye strain, prescribed various treatments including herbal eye drops, extended prayer sessions, and bloodletting to restore proper humoral balance. The most common condition, dubbed Netflix eye by the castle's medical staff, involved symptoms of dry eyes, blurred vision, and an inability to focus on objects farther than arm's length. Treatment included placing cold, damp cloths over the eyes, consuming large quantities of carrot soup, and spending mandatory time outdoors, staring at distant objects like mountains or dragons. Screen neck became another widespread ailment as medieval furniture was not designed for extended periods of looking downward at small devices. Castle blacksmiths began crafting specialized viewing stands and adjustable holders to position screens at appropriate angles, creating a new industry of medieval ergonomic equipment that combined traditional metalworking skills with contemporary technological needs. The social impact of streaming extended beyond individual viewing habits to transform the entire structure of medieval entertainment culture. Traditional bards found their profession threatened by an unlimited library of stories that never varied in quality and never demanded payment or meals in exchange for performance. Master Geoffrey, the castle's head bard who had served the royal family for 20 years, initially tried to compete with Netflix by expanding his repertoire and improving his performance techniques. He learned to incorporate sound effects, costume changes, and interactive elements into his storytelling, but eventually realized he couldn't compete with the production values and variety offered by streaming entertainment. Rather than accept defeat, Master Geoffrey pioneered a new form of entertainment: live commentary and analysis of Netflix content. He would watch popular series alongside the audience, providing historical context, explaining cultural references, and offering professional critique of the storytelling techniques. His commentary tracks became so popular that other kingdoms began requesting guest appearances for their own viewing sessions. The economic impact of streaming on the medieval entertainment industry created new job categories while eliminating traditional ones. Troubadours retrained as Netflix reviewers and recommendation specialists. Jesters became content curators, responsible for selecting appropriate programming for different occasions and audiences. Even the castle's musicians found new work creating custom soundtracks for viewing sessions and composing theme songs for popular shows. Religious authorities initially condemned Netflix as a distraction from spiritual contemplation and proper Christian devotion, but eventually embraced the educational potential of religious documentaries and biblical adaptations. Father Benedict, the castle's head chaplain, began incorporating Netflix content into his sermons, using popular shows as moral examples and theological teaching tools. His sermon series, What Would Jesus Watch?, became famous throughout the region, analyzing the moral implications of popular Netflix series and drawing parallels between contemporary entertainment and biblical teachings. His interpretation of The Good Place as a modern parable about redemption and moral philosophy drew pilgrims from neighboring kingdoms who wanted to experience this innovative blend of theology and television criticism. The international implications of streaming technology created new forms of cultural diplomacy and international relations. Different kingdoms developed preferences for different types of content, leading to the formation of streaming-based alliances and trade agreements. The Kingdom of Normandy became known for their sophisticated taste in period dramas and historical documentaries, while the Scottish clans preferred action-adventure series with lots of battle scenes and minimal romantic subplots. These preferences influenced diplomatic negotiations, with kingdoms offering to share premium account access as part of peace treaties and marriage alliances. Cultural exchange programs were established where young knights and nobles would travel to other kingdoms to experience their Netflix viewing traditions and learn about different entertainment cultures. These programs were considered essential for developing well-rounded international perspectives and preventing the kind of entertainment-based conflicts that had begun arising between kingdoms with incompatible viewing preferences. The technological infrastructure required to support widespread streaming in medieval times led to innovations that accelerated the development of medieval society by several centuries. The need for reliable power sources drove experimentation with water wheels, windmills, and early forms of mechanical energy generation. Communication networks expanded rapidly as kingdoms realized they needed better connectivity for consistent streaming quality. Messenger services evolved into primitive internet providers, with horseback riders carrying data packets between major castles and establishing relay stations throughout the countryside. The Great Netflix Outage of 1349, caused by a dragon accidentally destroying a major relay tower while pursuing a group of horse-mounted data couriers, demonstrated the dependency that medieval society had developed on streaming entertainment. For 3 days, the entire kingdom existed without access to Netflix, leading to widespread social unrest, increased incidents of actual dragon fighting, and a temporary revival of the concept of streaming compatibility became as important as traditional factors like political alliances, economic benefits, and personal attraction. Couples who couldn't agree on what to watch were considered fundamentally incompatible, while those who shared similar viewing preferences were thought to have a divine blessing on their relationship. Lady Margaret of Northumberland became famous for rejecting 12 different suitors based solely on their Netflix preferences, claiming that a man who enjoyed reality television could never understand her refined appreciation for historical dramas and documentary films. Her eventual marriage to Sir Robert the Well-Read was celebrated as a perfect match of intellectual entertainment preferences. The psychological effects of having unlimited entertainment options created a condition that medieval physicians termed choice paralysis of the mind. Knights who had previously made swift decisions in battle found themselves unable to select what to watch, spending hours scrolling through options without ever starting a program. Sir Gawain developed a particularly severe case, spending an entire week trying to choose between 3 different documentary series about siege warfare techniques. His indecision became so legendary that Gawain's choice entered the medieval vocabulary as a term for inability to make decisions when presented with too many equally appealing options. Treatment for choice paralysis involved structured decision-making, protocols, including coin flipping, consulting astrological charts, and seeking guidance from the castle's resident fortune teller. Some knights hired professional viewing consultants, who specialized in matching knights with appropriate entertainment based on their personality, current mood, and seasonal preferences. The educational impact of streaming proved revolutionary for medieval literacy and cultural awareness. Knights who had previously shown little interest in reading found themselves motivated to improve their skills in order to follow subtitle tracks and understand written content descriptions. The castle established the first medieval Netflix academy, where young pages could study the art of entertainment appreciation, critical analysis, and viewing etiquette. Courses included Introduction to Genre Recognition, Advanced Plot Analysis, Cross-Cultural Entertainment Studies, and The History of Storytelling from Oral Tradition to Streaming Media. Graduation requirements included writing detailed reviews of selected programs, demonstrating proficiency in multiple viewing formats including subtitles and audio description, and completing a final project that involved creating original content inspired by Netflix programming but adapted for medieval sensibilities. International students traveled from across Europe to attend the Netflix Academy, making Camelot a center of entertainment education and cultural exchange. The Academy's reputation attracted scholars, artists, and even royalty who wanted to understand this new form of cultural expression and its implications for society. As our tale draws toward its conclusion, we find that the introduction of Netflix to medieval society has created changes that extend far beyond simple entertainment consumption, fundamentally altering the social fabric of the kingdom in ways that neither King Arthur nor his wisest advisors could have anticipated. The great Netflix census of 1350 revealed shocking statistics about how streaming had transformed daily life in Camelot. The average knight now spent more time watching screens than practicing swordplay, leading to a noticeable decline in combat readiness that became apparent during the unfortunate dragon incident of late summer, when Sir Percival attempted to defeat a fire-breathing beast using tactics he had learned from watching How to Train Your Dragon rather than relying on traditional knightly training. The incident ended with minimal casualties, mostly because the dragon turned out to be more interested in discussing the historical accuracy of its portrayal in popular media than actually fighting anyone. The beast, who introduced himself as Gerald, had apparently been secretly watching Netflix from a cave outside the kingdom and had developed strong opinions about his species' representation in entertainment. "Finally, someone to talk to about this," Gerald had exclaimed, setting down what appeared to be a primitive viewing device made from polished metal and enchanted crystals. "Do you have any idea how offensive it is to constantly see dragons portrayed as mindless monsters? We're actually quite intelligent and have rich cultural traditions that never get represented in your moving pictures." This led to the kingdom's first interspecies Netflix discussion group, where dragons, knights, and various magical creatures met weekly to analyze entertainment content and discuss representation issues in fantasy media. The group's manifesto demanded better dragon characters, more nuanced portrayals of magical beings, and an end to the harmful stereotype that all dragons hoarded gold. Apparently, many were actually collectors of rare books, vintage wines, or artisanal cheeses. Gerald became the first dragon Netflix critic, writing detailed reviews of fantasy content from a dragon's perspective. His review of Game of Thrones was particularly scathing. "While I appreciate the inclusion of dragon characters, the portrayal of Daenerys' dragons as mere weapons of war completely ignores our sophisticated social structures and philosophical traditions. Also, the flight physics are completely unrealistic. No self-respecting dragon would waste energy on such inefficient aerial maneuvers." The interspecies discussion group expanded rapidly as word spread throughout the magical community. Unicorns complained about being portrayed as overly innocent creatures obsessed with purity, arguing that they were actually quite worldly and enjoyed sophisticated entertainment, including political dramas and crime thrillers. The castle's resident wizard, Merlin, joined enthusiastically and became known for his detailed analysis of how magic was portrayed in various series, often pausing episodes to explain why certain spells were impossible or historically inaccurate. The group's weekly meetings became major social events, with creatures traveling from across the realm to participate in discussions about their representation in popular media. These gatherings led to the creation of the first fantasy creature, Sensitivity Guidelines, a comprehensive document outlining respectful ways to portray magical beings in entertainment content. The economic transformation brought about by streaming culture created entirely new industries and career paths that previous generations couldn't have imagined. Professional binge coaches emerged to help people manage their viewing habits and maintain healthy relationships with entertainment. These specialists commanded high fees and were considered essential services for wealthy nobles who had lost control of their viewing schedules. Master Thomas the Binge Coach developed a comprehensive program for treating Netflix addiction that included gradual reduction of viewing time, scheduled outdoor activities, and group therapy sessions where addicted knights could share their experiences and support each other's recovery. His method, known as the Thomas Technique, involved replacing one episode per day with physical activity, social interaction, or productive work. Thomas's treatment facility, known as the Streaming Recovery Monastery, became famous throughout Europe as the first institution dedicated to helping people overcome entertainment addiction. The monastery combined traditional monastic practices with modern therapeutic techniques, creating a unique healing environment where patients could gradually reduce their screen time while developing healthier habits. The daily routine at the Streaming Recovery Monastery began with sunrise meditation, followed by physical exercise, productive work like farming or craftsmanship, limited supervised viewing time, group discussion sessions, and evening reflection periods. Patients learn to appreciate entertainment as one part of a balanced life, rather than the primary focus of their existence. The success stories from Thomas's program became legendary throughout the kingdom. Sir Gareth, who had once watched cooking shows for 18 hours straight while neglecting his nightly duties, eventually returned to active service and started his own culinary business serving meals, inspired by his favorite Netflix chefs. His restaurant, The Streaming Kitchen, became popular among both reformed binge-watchers and food enthusiasts, who appreciated the creative fusion of medieval cooking techniques with contemporary culinary innovation. Sir Percival overcame his Witcher obsession after 6 months of treatment and resumed his spiritual practices, though he continued to quote Geralt of Rivia during meditation sessions. His spiritual journey became a model for others, struggling to balance entertainment consumption with personal growth and religious devotion. He eventually wrote a book called The Way of the Mindful Viewer, which became required reading for anyone seeking to develop a healthy relationship with streaming entertainment. Lady Catherine, who had developed an unhealthy attachment to romantic comedies and had begun expecting her real-life relationships to follow scripted narratives, learned to appreciate authentic human connections through the monastery's relationship counseling program. She became an advocate for realistic portrayals of romance in entertainment and established the Royal Commission on Healthy Relationship Representation in Media. The cultural preservation movement gained momentum as concerned citizens realized that traditional medieval customs were being forgotten in favor. The society organized weekly events featuring pre-Netflix entertainment, including storytelling competitions where participants had to create and perform original narratives without any technological assistance, musical performances using traditional instruments and songs passed down through generations, and authentic medieval dancing that required participants to interact directly with each other, rather than passively consuming entertainment. These events initially attracted mostly older participants who remembered pre-streaming days, but gradually gained popularity among younger people who were curious about their cultural heritage and wanted to experience entertainment that required active participation, creativity, and social interaction rather than passive consumption. The intergenerational mixing at these events created valuable opportunities for cultural transmission and mutual understanding between different age groups. The society also established the Traditional Skills Academy, where people could learn pre-technological crafts and abilities that were being forgotten in the rush to embrace streaming culture. Classes included traditional woodworking, metalsmithing, textile production, agricultural techniques, horsemanship, archery, swordsmanship, cooking without modern conveniences, and various forms of artistic expression that had sustained medieval culture for centuries. Students at the Traditional Skills Academy often discovered that hands-on creative work provided a type of satisfaction and accomplishment that passive entertainment consumption could never match. Many reported that learning to create physical objects with their own hands gave them a sense of purpose and achievement that made streaming entertainment more enjoyable when consumed in moderation. As part of a balanced lifestyle, the technological infrastructure supporting widespread streaming continued to evolve, driven by increasing demand for better quality and more reliable service. The kingdom's first ISP, Camelot Connect, was established as a joint venture between the Royal Treasury and local technology innovators, providing internet access to rural areas that had previously been excluded from the streaming revolution. The expansion process required massive infrastructure development projects that created thousands of jobs and transformed the medieval economy. Teams of workers traveled throughout the countryside installing communication towers, digging trenches for cable systems, and establishing relay stations that could maintain consistent internet signals across long distances. These infrastructure projects became as significant as the great cathedral building projects of previous centuries, requiring similar levels of coordination, resource allocation, and skilled craftsmanship. The technical challenges of providing internet service in medieval times led to innovative solutions that combined traditional craftsmanship with contemporary technology. Castle blacksmiths learned to forge specialized metal components for communication equipment. Stonemasons developed techniques for incorporating technological infrastructure into traditional building designs. Even the guild system adapted to include new professions like network engineers, data transmission specialists, and digital infrastructure maintenance technicians. The Great Digital Divide controversy emerged as wealthy nobles with premium connections could stream in higher quality, while peasants in remote villages struggled with buffering, low-resolution content, and frequent service interruptions. This inequality sparked demands for universal internet access as a basic right, leading to heated political debates about whether streaming entertainment should be considered a luxury or a necessity in modern medieval society. The controversy reached its peak during the Internet Access Uprising of 1351, when groups of peasants and rural villagers marched on the castle, demanding equal access to streaming services. Their leader, a charismatic farmer named William the Connected, argued that access to information and entertainment was essential for full participation in contemporary society, and that digital inequality was creating new forms of social stratification that were even more limiting than traditional class systems. The uprising was resolved through the landmark Internet for All decree, which established public viewing centers in every village, guaranteed minimum connection speeds for all citizens, and created a progressive taxation system that funded universal access programs. The decree also established the principle that basic internet access was a public utility similar to roads, bridges, and water systems, requiring government support and regulation to ensure fair access for all citizens. The public viewing centers became important social gathering places where people could watch shows together while discussing plot developments, sharing interpretations, and maintaining the communal aspect of entertainment that had been part of traditional culture. These shared viewing experiences recreated some aspects of traditional entertainment culture while incorporating new technology, creating a hybrid form of social entertainment that satisfied both modern convenience and traditional community values. The viewing centers also served educational functions, offering classes in digital literacy, content creation, and critical media analysis. Local experts taught community members how to navigate streaming platforms effectively, evaluate the quality and reliability of different types of content, and create their own entertainment that reflected local culture and values. International streaming wars escalated as different kingdoms competed to produce the most popular original content and attract viewers from rival territories. The Kingdom of France launched French Netflix, with programming that emphasized culinary arts, romantic poetry, sophisticated cultural commentary, and philosophical discussions that reflected French intellectual traditions. Their flagship series, The Philosopher's Kitchen, combined cooking, instruction with discussions of existential questions, and became popular among viewers who wanted entertainment that engaged both their practical needs and their intellectual curiosity. Scotland countered with Highland streaming, featuring action-adventure content, historical documentaries about clan warfare, extensive collections of traditional music including bagpipe performances and Celtic ballads, and reality shows about Highland Games competitions. Their most successful series, Clan Wars Historical Edition, provided detailed analysis of famous Scottish battles while featuring reenactments performed by descendants of the original participants. The Germanic kingdoms collaborated to create Teutonic Tales, specializing in engineering documentaries, precision craftsmanship shows, and detailed historical analyses of military technology and fortification design. Their approach appealed to viewers who appreciated technical accuracy and educational content that could be applied to practical problem-solving in their daily lives. These competing streaming services began offering exclusive content and competing aggressively for subscribers, leading to the Treaty of Streaming Neutrality, which established rules for international content sharing and prevented streaming platforms from being used as tools of political manipulation or cultural imperialism. The treaty created frameworks for cultural exchange while protecting each kingdom's right to produce content that reflected their unique values and traditions. The treaty also established the International Board of Streaming Standards, responsible for monitoring content quality, resolving disputes between competing platforms, and ensuring that streaming technology was used to promote understanding and cooperation between different cultures rather than exacerbating existing conflicts or creating new sources of international tension. The board's work included developing universal content rating systems that could be understood across different kingdoms, establishing protocols for handling controversial content that might be acceptable in some cultures but offensive in others, and creating mechanisms for collaborative content production that could bring together artists and storytellers from different regions to create entertainment that appealed to international audiences. The education system underwent revolutionary changes as streaming technology was integrated into learning environments. The University of Camelot established the first department of digital literacy, where students could study the cultural impact of streaming technology, learn to create their own content, and develop critical analysis skills for evaluating entertainment media. Professor William the Wise, head of the new department, developed a curriculum that combined traditional medieval subjects with contemporary media studies. Students learned to analyze Netflix series using the same critical thinking skills they applied to classical literature, while also studying the technical aspects of content creation, distribution systems, and the psychology of audience engagement. The curriculum included courses on the history of storytelling from oral tradition to streaming media, which traced the evolution of narrative techniques across different technological platforms and examined how changing technology affected the types of stories that could be told and the ways audiences experienced them. Students studied how traditional ballads compared to modern series in terms of character development, narrative structure, and cultural messaging. Cross-cultural entertainment studies examined how different societies used entertainment to transmit values, preserve history, and build social cohesion. Students analyzed content from various kingdoms and cultures, learning to identify cultural assumptions, artistic techniques, and social messages embedded in different types of entertainment. This course helped students develop appreciation for diverse perspectives while also understanding how their own cultural background influenced their interpretation of entertainment content. Advanced critical analysis taught students to evaluate entertainment content for artistic merit, cultural significance, educational value, and potential social impact. Students learned to distinguish between entertainment that merely provided temporary distraction and content that offered genuine insight into human nature, historical events, or important social issues. The university's Netflix Studies program attracted international students and became a model for similar programs in other kingdoms. The program's reputation drew scholars, artists, and even royalty who wanted to understand this new form of cultural expression and its implications for society. Graduates were highly sought after as content creators, critics, cultural advisors, and educators, creating a new educated class that understood both traditional culture and modern entertainment technology. The program also established the first student exchange programs focused on streaming culture, where students could travel to other kingdoms to study different approaches to entertainment, content creation, and media analysis. These exchanges promoted international understanding and created networks of scholars who collaborated on research projects examining the global impact of streaming technology. The generational divide created by streaming technology led to ongoing tensions between older and younger members of society. The Great Generational Netflix War of 1351 began when elderly nobles complained that young people were losing traditional values, becoming dependent on artificial entertainment, and failing to develop the practical skills and moral character that had sustained medieval society for centuries. Older knights argued that young people who spent their time watching moving pictures were becoming soft, lazy, and disconnected from reality. They worried that the younger generation would be unprepared for the physical and mental challenges of medieval life, including warfare, manual labor, and the self-reliance necessary for survival in a dangerous world. Younger generations countered these arguments by claiming that their elders were resistant to beneficial technological progress and failed to recognize the educational and cultural value of streaming entertainment. They pointed out that many Netflix series provided valuable lessons about history, science, philosophy, and human nature that were more engaging and memorable than traditional educational methods. The conflict reached its peak during the infamous Great Hall incident, when young pages changed the viewing selection from a traditional historical documentary preferred by the older knights to a modern fantasy series featuring dragons, magic, and complex political intrigue. The resulting argument involved passionate philosophical debates about the nature of entertainment, the value of tradition versus innovation, and whether moving pictures were corrupting the moral fiber of medieval society or providing valuable new forms of cultural expression. The older knights argued that traditional entertainment forms like storytelling, music, and live performance required active participation, creativity, and social interaction that built character and community bonds. They worried that passive consumption of streaming content was creating a generation of people who expected to be entertained rather than entertaining themselves and others. The younger generation responded that streaming content could inspire creativity, provide educational opportunities, and create new forms of community through shared viewing experiences and online discussions. They argued that their elders were judging new technology by unfamiliar standards and failing to recognize its potential benefits when used appropriately. Resolution came through the wisdom of King Arthur, who declared that both traditional and modern entertainment had value when used appropriately, and established the Intergenerational Entertainment Council to mediate future conflicts and ensure that both classical and contemporary preferences were respected in public viewing spaces. The council developed guidelines for balanced entertainment programming that included both traditional and modern content, created opportunities for intergenerational dialogue about entertainment preferences, and established educational programs that helped people of all ages understand and appreciate different forms of cultural expression. The council's work led to innovative programming that combined traditional and modern entertainment forms. Historical Netflix featured documentaries that used traditional storytelling techniques alongside contemporary production values. Interactive streaming allowed viewers to participate in the entertainment by making decisions that affected story outcomes, combining the passive aspects of streaming with the active participation valued in traditional entertainment. Multi-generational viewing programs brought together people of different ages to watch selected content and discuss their different perspectives and interpretations. These programs created opportunities for older people to share their wisdom and experience while learning about contemporary culture, and for younger people to gain historical perspective while sharing their understanding of modern technology and social changes. The psychological impact of unlimited entertainment options continued to create new challenges for medieval mental health practitioners. Dr. Margaret the Mind Healer, the kingdom's first psychologist specializing in entertainment-related disorders, identified several new conditions that required professional treatment and developed innovative therapeutic approaches that combined traditional medieval healing practices with contemporary psychological understanding. Seasonal depression syndrome affected viewers, who became emotionally invested in series that were canceled unexpectedly or ended in ways that left them feeling unsatisfied or betrayed. These individuals often experience symptoms similar to grief, including sadness, anger, denial, and difficulty accepting that their favorite entertainment was no longer available. Treatment involved helping patients process their emotional attachment to fictional narratives and develop healthier relationships with entertainment that didn't depend on external validation or continued availability of specific content. Character attachment disorder involved people who developed unhealthy emotional relationships with fictional characters, sometimes to the point where they preferred these imaginary relationships to real human connections. Patients might spend excessive time thinking about fictional characters, feel genuine emotional pain when characters were harmed or killed, or attempt to model their real lives after fictional narratives that weren't applicable to actual medieval society. Reality confusion syndrome occurred when intensive viewers began to confuse entertainment narratives with actual historical events, personal experiences, or reasonable expectations for their own lives. Some patients started believing that historical documentaries represented completely accurate portrayals of past events, while others expected their real relationships to follow the scripted patterns they observed in romantic comedies or dramas. Treatment for these conditions involved a combination of traditional medieval remedies, adapted for contemporary problems, and innovative therapeutic techniques developed specifically for entertainment-related psychological issues. Herbal treatments were prescribed for anxiety caused by cliffhangers and sleep problems resulting from late-night binge-watching sessions, while meditation practices helped patients develop better emotional regulation and perspective on their entertainment consumption. Group therapy sessions proved particularly effective for helping people process the emotional impact of favorite shows ending, characters being killed off unexpectedly, or series being canceled before reaching satisfying conclusions. These support groups created communities where people could share their experiences, validate each other's emotional. The defense argued that information about fictional narratives couldn't be owned by individuals, and that restricting discussion of entertainment content violated traditional freedoms of speech and expression. They claimed that Sir Marcus had shared information during a legitimate argument and hadn't intended to cause lasting harm to Sir James's entertainment experience. The trial concluded with the establishment of the Spoiler Protection Act, which made malicious spoiler sharing a punishable offense while protecting the rights of people to discuss entertainment in appropriate contexts. The law created detailed definitions of what constituted malicious spoiler behavior versus legitimate discussion, established spoiler-free zones in public spaces where people could safely discuss current events without risk of entertainment contamination, and created mediation processes for resolving spoiler-related conflicts without resorting to formal legal proceedings. The Spoiler Protection Act also established the Office of Entertainment Ethics, responsible for investigating complaints about spoiler-related misconduct, mediating disputes between viewers with different levels of knowledge about various series, and developing educational programs that taught proper etiquette for discussing entertainment content in mixed company. The religious implications of streaming technology continued to generate theological debate and spiritual reflection as religious authorities struggled to understand how this new form of entertainment fit into traditional spiritual frameworks and whether it represented an opportunity for spiritual growth or a distraction from proper religious devotion. Father Benedict's progressive approach to integrating entertainment with religious instruction was challenged by traditionalist clergy who believed that moving pictures, distracted from proper spiritual contemplation, encouraged worldly desires over spiritual growth, and represented a form of idol worship that violated fundamental Christian principles about focusing attention on divine rather than earthly matters. Conservative religious leaders argued that streaming entertainment encouraged passive consumption rather than active spiritual practice, promoted materialistic values through advertising and consumer culture, and exposed believers to moral content that might weaken their commitment to traditional religious teachings. They worried that people who spent hours watching fictional narratives were neglecting prayer, meditation, community service, and other activities that contributed to spiritual development. The great theological streaming debate of 1353 centered on whether watching religious content on Netflix was equivalent to actual religious experience, whether entertainment could serve legitimate spiritual purposes, or was merely secular distraction from divine matters, and how religious institutions should respond to the cultural changes brought about by streaming technology. Progressive religious thinkers argued that streaming technology could be used as a tool for spiritual education, moral instruction, and community building when used appropriately. They pointed out that religious documentaries, historical dramas about saints and biblical figures, and educational content about different faith traditions could enhance rather than replace traditional religious practices. Conservative voices maintained that authentic spiritual experience required direct personal engagement with divine mystery through prayer, contemplation, and community worship, and that mediated experiences through entertainment technology could never substitute for genuine spiritual practice. They argued that even religious content consumed passively through streaming couldn't provide the transformative spiritual experiences available through traditional religious practices. The debate was resolved through a series of carefully structured theological discussions involving representatives from various religious orders, lay religious leaders, and ordinary believers who had experience integrating streaming entertainment with their spiritual lives. The discussions concluded that entertainment could serve legitimate religious purposes when used appropriately as a supplement to rather than replacement for traditional spiritual practices. This resolution led to the development of contemplative viewing practices, where religious content was watched in a meditative state with structured reflection periods, group discussions about spiritual themes, and integration with traditional prayer and contemplation practices. Contemplative viewing sessions became popular in monasteries, parish communities, and religious study groups as a way to engage with contemporary culture while maintaining spiritual focus and community bonds. Religious communities also developed guidelines for evaluating entertainment content for spiritual value, including criteria for identifying material that promoted positive moral values, encouraged spiritual growth, provided educational content about religious history and traditions, and inspired viewers to engage more deeply with their faith communities and spiritual practices. The agricultural impact of streaming became apparent during the harvest crisis of 1354, when farmers became so absorbed in seasonal television programming that they neglected their crops, leading to food shortages, economic disruption, and serious concerns about the kingdom's ability to feed its population during the upcoming winter months. The crisis began when several popular series released new seasons during the critical harvest period, coinciding with important agricultural work that required immediate attention and couldn't be postponed without serious consequences for crop yields. Many farmers chose to continue watching their favorite shows rather than working in their fields, believing they could make up the lost time later without realizing how narrow the window was for successful harvest activities. The situation was exacerbated by favorable weather, conditions that created an optimal but brief opportunity for harvesting, requiring farmers to work long hours during a specific time period to maximize crop yields. The combination of compelling entertainment and demanding agricultural requirements created an impossible choice for many farmers who had become deeply invested in their viewing routines. Emergency measures included mandatory viewing, restrictions during critical agricultural periods, the establishment of farm work incentive programs that provided rewards for meeting agricultural productivity goals, and the development of mobile viewing technology that allowed farmers to watch content while working in their fields. though this proved problematic when attention-demanding shows distracted workers from dangerous or precision tasks. The government also implemented emergency food distribution programs to address shortages caused by reduced harvests, established agricultural priority broadcasting that promoted farming-related content during critical work periods, and created economic support programs for farmers who had lost income due to reduced productivity caused by entertainment-related distractions. The long-term solution involved creating agricultural Netflix, specialized streaming content that combined entertainment with educational material about farming techniques, crop management, seasonal planning, and agricultural innovation. This programming was designed to be both engaging and practically useful, allowing farmers to enjoy entertainment while learning skills that improved their productivity and job satisfaction. Agricultural Netflix featured series like Masters of the Harvest, which followed expert farmers through complete growing seasons while providing detailed instruction on best practices for various crops. The Farming Life combined reality TV elements with educational content, following farm families through their daily challenges while explaining the reasoning behind various agricultural decisions. Historical farming provided entertainment value while teaching traditional agricultural techniques that had been used successfully for generations, helping modern farmers understand time-tested approaches that could supplement contemporary methods. Agricultural innovation showcased new farming technologies and techniques being developed in other kingdoms, inspiring local farmers to experiment with improved methods that could increase their productivity and profitability. The military applications of streaming technology were explored as military leaders realized that entertainment could be used for training, morale building, strategic planning, and maintaining unit cohesion during long deployments or peacetime service. The Royal Military Academy began incorporating Netflix content into their curriculum to teach tactical principles, leadership skills, and cultural awareness. Military strategists analyzed battle scenes from popular historical dramas and fantasy series to identify effective and ineffective tactical approaches, using entertainment content to illustrate strategic principles that might be difficult to understand through traditional instruction methods. Students could observe the consequences of various tactical decisions in a visual, engaging format that made abstract strategic concepts more concrete and memorable. Character development arcs in popular series were used to illustrate leadership principles, decision-making processes under pressure, and the importance of maintaining morale and unit cohesion during difficult circumstances. Military instructors found that students could relate more easily to leadership lessons when they were presented through compelling narratives featuring characters they cared about. The military also used streaming content to develop cultural awareness and understanding of foreign societies, particularly important for knights who might be involved in diplomatic missions or international conflicts. Historical dramas and documentaries about other kingdoms provided valuable insight into different military traditions, social customs, and strategic approaches that could be useful in both warfare and diplomacy. The establishment of military Netflix, featuring content specifically designed for military training and education, provided soldiers with entertainment that was both enjoyable and professionally relevant. The service included historical documentaries about famous battles and military leaders. Tactical analysis shows that broke down successful and unsuccessful military strategies, and leadership development programming featuring interviews with experienced commanders and analysis of leadership challenges in various historical contexts. Military Netflix also featured content designed to maintain morale during deployments, including comedy series that could help soldiers cope with stress, adventure stories that reminded them of the heroic traditions they were part of, and communications from home that helped maintain connections with family and community during extended service periods. The service proved particularly valuable for maintaining unit cohesion and shared culture among military personnel who came from different backgrounds and regions of the kingdom. Shared viewing experiences created common reference points and inside jokes that strengthened bonds between soldiers, while educational content ensured that everyone had access to the same high-quality military instruction regardless of their previous experience or educational background. The environmental impact of widespread streaming became a significant concern as the energy requirements for powering viewing devices, maintaining communication networks, and supporting the technological infrastructure put increasing strain on the kingdom's limited power generation capabilities and natural resources. The Great Power Crisis of 1355 occurred when demand for electricity to support streaming activities exceeded the kingdom's ability to generate power using traditional methods like water wheels Windmills and manual labor. The crisis forced rapid development of sustainable energy solutions and more efficient viewing practices to prevent complete collapse of the entertainment system that had become central to medieval social life. Innovations included solar-powered viewing stations that used polished mirrors and lens systems to concentrate sunlight for device charging, wind-generated electricity systems specifically designed to power castle entertainment networks, and manual exercise-powered devices that combined physical fitness activities with entertainment consumption, allowing people to power their viewing while maintaining their health and fitness. The crisis also spurred development of more energy-efficient viewing devices, community viewing systems that served multiple users with single power sources, and viewing schedules designed to distribute power consumption more evenly throughout the day and week. These technical innovations demonstrated how environmental challenges could drive beneficial technological development and social innovation. The establishment of the Environmental Entertainment Council led to comprehensive policies for sustainable streaming practices, including energy-efficient viewing schedules that concentrated high-power activities during peak renewable energy generation periods, shared viewing experiences that reduced individual energy consumption while maintaining social benefits, and educational programming about environmental conservation that helped viewers understand their impact on natural resources. The Council also developed carbon offset programs where entertainment companies invested in environmental restoration projects to compensate for the energy consumption required to provide streaming services. These programs included reforestation efforts, renewable energy infrastructure development, and research into more sustainable entertainment, technologies that could provide the same social benefits with reduced environmental impact. Environmental Netflix emerged as a specialized streaming service focused on content that educated viewers about environmental issues while entertaining them with nature documentaries, outdoor adventure series, and programming that highlighted sustainable living practices. This service demonstrated how entertainment technology could be used to promote environmental awareness and encourage behavioral changes that benefited the natural world. As we reach the true conclusion of our extended tale, we find that the introduction of Netflix to medieval society has created a complex new world that combines traditional medieval values with contemporary technological capabilities, resulting in a society that is both recognizably medieval and distinctly transformed by its relationship with streaming entertainment. The kingdom has evolved into a civilization that successfully balances heritage preservation with technological innovation, where knights can appreciate classical literature while enjoying modern entertainment, where traditional storytelling coexists productively with streaming technology, and where the wisdom accumulated over centuries of medieval life informs thoughtful decisions about adopting and integrating new technological capabilities. The most profound lesson learned through this great social experiment is that technology, regardless of how advanced, convenient, or entertaining it may be, cannot replace the fundamental human needs for meaningful community relationships, purposeful work that contributes to society, authentic personal connections based on shared values and experiences, and the sense of individual agency that comes from actively participating in rather than passively consuming cultural life. The most successful adaptations to streaming culture were invariably those that enhanced rather than replaced traditional social bonds and cultural practices. The viewing experiences that provided the greatest long-term satisfaction were those that brought people together, sparked meaningful conversations about important topics, inspired creative activities and personal growth, and strengthened rather than weakened the social fabric of medieval community life. The Knights of Camelot discovered that the real treasure wasn't the endless streams of content they could consume individually, but the shared experiences they created while watching meaningful entertainment together, the deep conversations they had about stories that touched on universal human themes, the ways they used entertainment to better understand themselves and their relationships with others, and the creative projects they undertook inspired by the content they consumed. The kingdom learned that streaming technology was most valuable when it served as a tool for human connection rather than a substitute for it, when it provided inspiration for active engagement with life rather than passive escape from life's challenges, and when it supported rather than competed with the activities that gave medieval life its meaning and purpose, including meaningful work, spiritual growth, community service, artistic expression, and the cultivation of wisdom through experience and reflection. And so our tale ends where it began, in the great hall of Camelot Castle, where King Arthur and his knights gather each evening not merely to stare at magical glowing screens, but to share stories that matter. discuss ideas that challenge and inspire them, and strengthen the bonds of fellowship, mutual respect, and shared purpose that make their communities strong, resilient, and capable of adapting to change while preserving what is most valuable from their heritage. The glowing screens continue to flicker in the candlelight, but they illuminate far more than just entertainment. They reveal the enduring human capacity to adapt creatively to new circumstances, to learn and grow from challenges, and to find meaning and connection in both traditional practices and innovative technologies when these are approached with wisdom, moderation, and genuine care for the well-being of the entire community. In this strange new world where medieval knights have Netflix, the greatest adventure isn't any quest that appears on screen, but the ongoing real-world journey of building a society that successfully honors both its past and its future, that uses new technology to enhance rather than replace human relationships, and that maintains focus on the timeless values that make life worth living regardless of what entertainment options are. Available, the economic transformation brought about by streaming. Culture created entirely new industries and career paths that previous generations couldn't have imagined. Professional binge coaches emerged to help people manage their viewing habits and maintain healthy relationships with entertainment. These specialists commanded high fees and were considered essential services for wealthy nobles who had lost control of their viewing schedules. Master Thomas the Binge Coach developed a comprehensive program for treating Netflix addiction that included gradual reduction of viewing time, scheduled outdoor activities, and group therapy sessions where addicted knights could share their experiences and support each other's recovery. The success stories from Thomas's program became legendary throughout the kingdom. Sir Gareth, who had once watched cooking shows for 18 hours straight, eventually returned to active duty and even started his own small cooking business serving meals inspired by his favorite Netflix chefs. Sir Percival overcame his Witcher obsession and resumed his spiritual practices, though he continued to quote Geralt of Rivia during meditation sessions. The cultural preservation movement gained momentum as concerned citizens realized that traditional medieval customs were being forgotten in favor of entertainment consumption. The Society for the Preservation of Pre-Netflix Culture was founded by a group of elderly knights and scholars who were determined to maintain authentic medieval traditions. Lady Eleanor the Traditional led efforts to document and preserve medieval entertainment forms that were being abandoned in favor of streaming. Her comprehensive guide, How Our Ancestors Amused Themselves Before Moving Pictures, became required reading in the kingdom's schools and included detailed instructions for traditional games, storytelling techniques, and social customs that had been practiced for generations. The society organized weekly events featuring pre-Netflix entertainment, including storytelling competitions, musical performances, and traditional dancing. These events initially attracted mostly older participants, but gradually gained popularity among younger people who were curious about their cultural heritage and wanted to experience entertainment that required active participation rather than passive consumption. The technological infrastructure supporting widespread streaming continued to evolve, driven by increasing demand for better quality and more reliable service. The kingdom's first ISP, Camelot Connect, was established as a joint venture between the Royal Treasury and local technology innovators, providing internet access to rural areas that had previously been excluded from the streaming revolution. The expansion of internet access led to the Great Digital Divide controversy, as wealthy nobles with premium connections could stream in higher quality, while peasants in remote villages struggled with buffering and low-resolution content. This inequality sparked demands for universal internet access as a basic right, leading to the landmark Internet for All decree that established public viewing centers in every village and guaranteed minimum connection speeds for all citizens. The public viewing centers became important social gathering places where people could watch shows together while discussing plot, developments, and sharing interpretations. These communal viewing experiences recreated some aspects of traditional entertainment culture while incorporating the new technology, creating a hybrid form of social entertainment that satisfied both modern convenience and traditional community values. International streaming wars escalated as different kingdoms competed to produce the most popular original content and attract viewers from rival territories. The Kingdom of France launched French Netflix, with programming that emphasized culinary arts, romantic poetry, and sophisticated cultural commentary. Scotland countered with Highland streaming, featuring action-adventure content, historical documentaries about clan warfare, and an extensive collection of bagpipe music videos. These streaming services began offering exclusive content and competing for subscribers, leading to the Treaty of Streaming Neutrality. which established rules for international content sharing and prevented streaming platforms from being used as tools of political manipulation or cultural imperialism. The treaty also created the International Board of Streaming Standards, responsible for monitoring content, quality, and resolving disputes between competing platforms. The education system underwent revolutionary changes as streaming technology was integrated into learning environments. The University of Camelot established the first department of digital literacy, where students could study the cultural impact of streaming technology, learn to create their own content, and develop critical analysis skills for evaluating entertainment media. Professor William the Wise, head of the new department, developed a curriculum that combined traditional medieval subjects with contemporary media studies. Students learned to analyze Netflix series using the same critical thinking skills they applied to classical literature, while also studying the technical aspects of content creation and distribution. The university's Netflix Studies program attracted international students and became a model for similar programs in other kingdoms. Graduates were highly sought after as content creators, critics, and cultural advisors, creating a new educated class that understood both traditional culture and modern entertainment technology. The generational divide created by streaming technology led to ongoing tensions between older and younger members of society. The Great Generational Netflix War of 1351 began when elderly nobles complained that young people were losing traditional values and becoming dependent on artificial entertainment, while younger generations argued that their elders were resistant to beneficial technological progress. The conflict reached its peak during the infamous Great Hall Incident, when young pages changed the viewing selection from a traditional historical documentary preferred by the older knights to a modern fantasy series featuring dragons, magic, and complex political intrigue. The resulting argument involved philosophical debates about the nature of entertainment, the value of tradition versus innovation, and whether moving pictures were corrupting the moral fiber of medieval society. Resolution came through the wisdom of King Arthur, who declared that both traditional and modern entertainment had value, and established the Intergenerational Entertainment Council to mediate future conflicts and ensure that both classical and contemporary preferences were respected in public viewing spaces. The psychological impact of unlimited entertainment options continued to create new challenges for medieval mental health practitioners. Dr. Margaret the Mind Healer, the kingdom's first psychologist specialized in entertainment-related disorders, identified several new conditions that required professional treatment. Seasonal depression syndrome affected viewers who became emotionally invested in series that were canceled or ended unsatisfactorily. Character attachment disorder involved people who developed unhealthy emotional relationships with fictional characters. Reality confusion syndrome occurred when intensive viewers began to confuse entertainment narratives with actual, historical events or personal experiences. Treatment for these conditions involved a combination of traditional medieval remedies and innovative therapeutic techniques. Herbal treatments were prescribed for anxiety caused by cliffhangers, while group therapy sessions helped people process the emotional impact of favorite shows ending or characters being killed off unexpectedly. The criminal justice system had to adapt to new types of offenses related to streaming culture. Spoiler assault became a recognized crime, punishable by public humiliation and temporary banishment from viewing areas. Password theft was treated as seriously as stealing horses or weapons, while unauthorized account sharing resulted in fines and community service. Great Spoiler Trial of 1352 established important legal precedents when Sir Marcus was accused of deliberately revealing the ending of a popular mystery series to his rival, Sir James, during a heated argument about jousting techniques. The case raised complex questions about the nature of information ownership, the right to share knowledge, and whether spoilers could be considered a form of psychological warfare. The trial concluded with the establishment of the Spoiler Protection Act, which made malicious spoiler sharing a punishable offense while protecting the rights of people to discuss entertainment in appropriate contexts. The law also created spoiler-free zones in public, spaces where people could safely discuss current events without risk of entertainment contamination. The religious implications of streaming technology continued to generate theological debate and spiritual reflection. Father Benedict's progressive approach to integrating entertainment with religious instruction was challenged by traditionalist clergy who believed that moving pictures distracted from proper spiritual contemplation. The great theological streaming debate of 1353 centered on whether watching religious content on Netflix was equivalent to actual religious experience, and whether entertainment could serve legitimate spiritual purposes or was merely a secular distraction from divine matters. The debate was resolved through a series of carefully structured theological discussions that concluded that entertainment could serve religious purposes when used appropriately, but could not replace traditional spiritual practices like prayer, meditation, and community worship. This led to the development of contemplative viewing practices, where religious content was watched in a meditative state with structured reflection periods. The agricultural impact of streaming became apparent during the harvest crisis of 1354, when farmers became so absorbed in seasonal television programming that they neglected their crops, leading to food shortages and economic disruption. The crisis demonstrated how entertainment technology could have unexpected consequences for essential economic activities. Emergency measures included mandatory viewing, restrictions during critical agricultural periods, the establishment of farm work incentive programs, and the development of agricultural productivity apps that gamified farming tasks and made them competitive with entertainment consumption. The solution involved creating agricultural Netflix specialized content that combined entertainment with educational material about farming techniques, crop management, and seasonal planning. This programming was designed to be both engaging and practically useful, allowing farmers to enjoy entertainment while learning skills that improved their productivity. Military applications of streaming technology were explored as military leaders realized that entertainment could be used for training, morale building, and strategic planning. The Royal Military Academy began using Netflix content to teach tactical principles, leadership skills, and cultural awareness. Military strategists analyzed battle scenes from popular shows to identify effective and ineffective tactical approaches, while using character development arcs to illustrate leadership principles and decision-making processes. This approach proved more engaging than traditional military education and resulted in improved retention of strategic concepts. The establishment of military Netflix, featuring content specifically designed for military training and education, provided soldiers with entertainment that was both enjoyable and professionally relevant. The service included historical documentaries, tactical analysis shows, and leadership development programming. The environmental impact of widespread streaming became a concern as the energy requirements for powering viewing devices and maintaining communication networks put strain on the kingdom's limited power generation capabilities. The Great Power Crisis of 1355 forced the development of sustainable energy solutions and efficient viewing practices. Innovations included solar-powered viewing stations, wind-generated electricity for castle entertainment systems, and manual exercise-powered devices that combined physical fitness with entertainment consumption. These solutions demonstrated that environmental challenges could drive beneficial technological innovations. The establishment of the Environmental Entertainment Council led to the development of eco-friendly viewing practices, including energy-efficient viewing schedules, shared viewing experiences that reduced individual energy consumption, and educational programming about environmental conservation and sustainable living practices. As we reach the true conclusion of our extended tale, we find that the introduction of Netflix to medieval society has created a complex new world that combines the best aspects of traditional culture with the benefits of technological innovation, while also presenting challenges that require wisdom, adaptation, and careful balance between progress and preservation. The kingdom has evolved into a society that values both heritage and innovation, where knights can appreciate classical literature while enjoying modern entertainment, where traditional storytelling coexists with streaming technology, and where the wisdom of the past informs decisions about future technological adoption. Perhaps the most profound lesson learned through this great experiment is that technology, no matter how advanced or entertaining, cannot replace the fundamental human needs for community, purpose, meaningful work, and authentic relationships. The most successful adaptations to streaming culture were those that enhanced rather than replaced traditional social bonds and cultural practices. The Knights of Camelot discovered that the real treasure wasn't the endless content they could consume, but the shared experiences they created while watching it together, the conversations they had about meaningful stories, and the ways they used entertainment to better understand themselves and their world. And so our tale ends where it began, in the great hall of Camelot Castle, where King Arthur and his knights gather each evening not just to watch moving pictures on magical devices, but to share stories, discuss ideas, and strengthen the bonds of fellowship that make their community strong and resilient. The glowing screens continue to flicker in the candlelight, but they illuminate more than just entertainment. They reveal the enduring human capacity to adapt, grow and find meaning in both tradition and innovation. In this strange new world where medieval knights have Netflix, the greatest adventure isn't any quest that appears on screen, but the ongoing journey of building a society that honors both its past and its future. Sir Galahad still sits in his chamber each evening, but now his viewing is purposeful rather than compulsive. He watches documentaries to learn new skills, enjoys comedies to share laughter with friends, and appreciates dramas that help him understand the complexity of human nature. The magical viewing box that once seemed like sorcery has become a tool for growth, learning, and connection. The transformation is complete, but the story continues, as all the best stories do, with the promise that tomorrow will bring new challenges, new discoveries, and new opportunities to choose wisdom over convenience, community over isolation, and purpose over passive entertainment. In this medieval world where Netflix exists, the most important lesson learned is that technology serves humanity best when it enhances rather than replaces the timeless values of courage, wisdom, friendship, and the endless human quest for meaning and connection. The screens may glow, but the heart of the story remains unchangingly, eternally human.